Welcome back. We're talking about China's global leadership following President Xi Jinping's state visit to Switzerland and his historic speech to the World Economic Forum in Davos. Still with us, Keyu Jin is a professor at the London School of Economics. Pepe Escobar is editor-at-large for Asia Times.Philippe Monnier is with the high-tech startup WayRay, and Robert Hormats with Kissinger Associates. Philip, let me start with you this time. Let's talk about the relationship between China and Switzerland. It's a relationship that goes back some way. And they have something in common. China sees innovation as the engine of future economic growth. That's something that Switzerland has been doing for a very long time. But in many respects, China has made great progress. I mean, if we look at things from artificial intelligence to drones to genetics, China is now in the top 25 countries as far as innovation is concerned. So how does China and Switzerland work together to boost innovation globally?
Yes. So I think, first of all, I would like to say that the relation between China and Switzerland are extremely good. It is not only at the political level, but we really have a lot of friendship between Switzerland and China. The first joint venture in the history was between a Swiss company and a Chinese company in 1980. In Switzerland, we also admire a lot China for many historical innovation like compass, gunpowder, and so on. We also admire a lot in Switzerland all those new technology companies like Alibaba, Tencent, and so on. And then regarding the cooperation, I mean, I think there is a very open dialogue between Switzerland and China at many levels, government level and also private level. And of course, many success stories cannot be transposed from one country to another one. For instance, in Switzerland, I think one of the key of our success in innovation is that there is a very strong laissez-faire policy. The government doesn't have a strong industrial policy like you have in other countries like France, Japan. So open dialogue, sincere dialogue, knowing well that not everything can be transposed directly from one country to the other one.
Pepe, China has vast influence, as you've been telling us, of course, in regional economies in Asia. We've seen that with the Silk Road Initiative, One Belt, One Road. It's what has also been called interconnected growth. So how does President Xi Jinping and the Chinese convince the rest of the world that this is a better model, interconnected growth?
Well, China cannot export its model like a sort of Beijing consensus in economic terms because it's absolutely unique. And now they are tweaking their model. They used to be the factory of the world. In many aspects, they still are, but they're also delocalizing to parts of South Asia or Southeast Asia. And now they are going to export their own high-tech products, value-added products, and export their own electronic technology, for instance, via Alibaba or Tencent. So they're in the middle of steering the ocean liner. So, and obviously in the middle of all this, you simply cannot sell this steering to anybody else, of course. And it's a two-way thing as well. So China is a major importer as well. They are the #1 importer for over 70 countries, and they are already between 10% and 11% in terms of global imports. So as they delocalize, not only across Asia, especially Central Asia via the new Silk Roads, all the way to parts of Africa and Europe as well, they'll be importing more. So it's, in fact, it's not even a black hole. It's like kind of white hole, let's put it this way, in terms of it's so big. The numbers are so big, and the transformation of the system is also so big, you cannot compare to anything else. But it's going to be the driver of globalization from now on.
Right, and Keyu, President Xi Jinping also laid out the course for continued growth. The key is innovation. China just doesn't want to be the world's factory, the world's manufacturing hub. It wants to develop products from the ground up. Let's take a listen to what President Xi had to say.
The fundamental issue plaguing the global economy is the lack of a driving force for growth. Innovation is the primary force guiding development. Unlike the previous industrial revolutions, the fourth industrial revolution is unfolding at an exponential rather than linear pace. We need to relentlessly pursue innovation. Only with the courage to innovate and reform can we remove bottlenecks blocking global growth and development.
So, Keyu, what do you make of this model for growth?
Of course, I mean, productivity growth based on innovation is the answer to everything, right? There's no question about that. The question is, can that be turned into a reality? And is it appropriate for certain countries and not so much others, in particular if we talk about China? Personally, I believe that long-term wise, it's definitely innovation-based growth is definitely the most important driver for China's long-term growth. But in the near term, it is quite marginal. If you look at even productivity growth in the U.S. during a period of intense innovation, at the macro level, the productivity growth has not been that rapid. What really China really needs, unfortunately, is still continued reforms, even under its current model. That will give the biggest boost to China's economic growth. R&D, research and development investment, is already very high in China. That should continue, but that does not mean that's going to lead automatically to innovation that actually helps with economic growth immediately. But lastly, if you want to talk about innovation-based growth, there's one critical thing that China still has to tackle, the challenge, which is intellectual property rights. So long as that is not fully protected and embraced, then I think it's really difficult to talk about a sustainable technological innovation-based growth model.
Right, so Robert, here we have President Xi talking about globalization, talking about growth, talking about innovation, but he also talked about the fact that these all have to be beneficial to everybody. Let's listen to what he had to say.
The richest 1% of the world's population own more wealth than the remaining 99%. Inequality in income distribution and uneven development are worrying. Over 700 million people in the world are still living in extreme poverty. For many families, to have warm houses, enough food and secure jobs is still a distant dream. This is the biggest challenge facing the world. It is also what is behind the social turmoil in some countries.
So, Robert, there we have the president presenting some very stark figures about wealth inequality and what he wants to do about it. Is there a lesson here for the rest of the world?
Well, he's absolutely right, and there is a strong message. The problem is global in that you have vast gaps in equality or inequality between some groups of countries and a number of other countries, with some doing much better than others. And you have that within countries, where you have, in some countries, including the United States, a number of people who do extremely well and a large number of people who simply feel marginalized. They feel that they're not able to catch up with others, or they don't have sufficient opportunities. Many people feel that they've still not recovered from the financial crisis of 2007, 2008. So reducing opportunity gaps and income gaps is very important for social stability. The President Xi absolutely is correct, and the United States and indeed many other countries are going to have to do that to demonstrate that people, while there is a lot of technological progress, as has been said, productivity really lags behind that. A lot of people don't seem to have benefited economically. So the goal is to keep the technology and the innovation going, but make sure more people benefit from it. More people are better able to use it, not just to download music, but to be able to use it for increasing their own productivity. That's a very important thing.
Pepe, if we look at where China wants to go, China has long championed the idea of a free trade area of the Asia Pacific. How can China create favorable trade conditions for the Asia Pacific region, given that the US-led TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, is now effectively dead?
Well, by promoting a system that is more inclusive than the TPP, and it was not basically organized or disorganized by a bunch of CEOs protected from all kinds of scrutiny, like a sort of a secret deal. The TPP was basically a secret deal, and it basically favored huge multinationals, most of them American. The idea behind the RCEP and the free trade area of the Americas is something more inclusive. It would include all 10 ASEAN countries plus China, South Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, very important. They all already have trade deals among themselves, and they trade a lot among themselves. And of course, how they're going to trade as a bloc with the European Union and with the US later on. So this is more like it, in fact. It's inescapable it's going to be a big trade bloc thing. It already is. There's Mercosur in South America as well. But more inclusive, of course, slashing tariffs all over and fighting protectionism in the sense, like I said before, India wants to be a big trade power, but made in India doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be overprotective with their own markets. So this is the way. And it's very important because for instance, Japan, South Korea, and China, they have been working inside RCEP for a few years now. So, and in terms of TPP, you had some Asian countries, for instance, Japan and Malaysia, that from the beginning were against TPP.
Right.
So I see RCEP as a way towards a free trade area of Asia uniting with the Americans later on.
Okay, and you get the last word. That's all we have time for. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for being with us.